Oh, let's. I better check this is actually connected. I was so busy waiting for the countdown, I forgot to actually double check everything. Audio.
One. Yes, that's the one. All right. So, hello. Another live. Let me just get adjusted. I'm in my son's room again. Interesting week, both in terms of obviously restrictions are easing. So I've actually been into London this week. Went in yesterday to talk to a friend of mine about some projects we're thinking of doing over the next, well, certainly the next year. And we'll see where it goes from there. So that's been kind of interesting. Hey Rajesh, how you doing? How's all things going with your estate agency help and whatever you're calling it? And then on the train on the way home, as you do, I sat and got my journal out, started playing with some ideas, and that got me thinking about this idea of daily income targets, more so from a way of developing your focus. I think some of the things that have helped. So let me kind of start at the beginning with this. So I'll kind of jump into it, and then I'll share sort of as we go along. I'll share whatever pops in my head in terms of what's been going on this week. Funnily enough, just to kind of share some spooky things. And I share this because I think it's insightful in the sense that, fantastic, good to see that it's actually starting to show. I mean, because the first step always is market validation, Rajesh. So it's very much about, can you get in front of somebody? Can you validate that what you're offering is what they want to buy? And also at the same time, because what I find useful with talking to people one-on-one is getting inside their head and really understanding the challenges they're facing. More importantly, and this, I guess, is my NLP background, I'm interested in the beliefs that are driving their current behavior, because that gives me a better understanding of why they're where they're at. If that makes sense. So for me personally, that's the ultimate. It's like I can get in someone's head, I can find out what their beliefs are. That gives me a really clear indication of what's driving them. That gives me a clear indication of the problems they're facing. Like it explains why they're facing certain problems. And actually, what I'm talking about today came out of that. It's the whole thing of daily income targets came out of realizing that a lot of people don't have them and understanding why they don't have them, mostly because they don't want to set themselves up for disappointment. So they set something and then, of course, they don't achieve it. And then if that happens consistently, it can be very demotivating. And I get all of that. And yet the flip side of it is that actually they're more important than just, it's kind of understanding that there is this, I guess, like a J curve. So there's this idea that like when you set out, you might set certain goals, and if you don't hit them, it's demotivating. But actually, you've got to go through that J curve to kind of get on the other side of it, where you have, I guess the modern word is resilience. I just think of it in terms of where you get to that place where you don't care anymore. You just go for it. So anyway, so we'll talk about that. And so good to see you getting some market validation. That's important. As I said, my key thing is you want to get in front of anybody. Even this is just popping in my head, so I'm just going to share it anyway. So like, for example, on LinkedIn, you could find estate agents quite easily because you just search for them. And then you could drop them a message. You could even cold call them if you wanted to, with a view to just saying, look, this is what's happening. This is what I'm starting. I'm looking for some instant sort of beta feedback. Would you be willing to kind of chat 15 minutes so I can get a good understanding of where you're at, what you're doing, how you're doing it? And maybe, I'll offer you a couple of insights that would make a difference to what you're doing based on, and then give you a credibility statement based on my 6 gazillion years as a successful estate agent listing $1 million properties or whatever it might be. But that's what I would do. I would do that because I want to talk to people. I want to talk to people in the marketplace as quickly as possible. All right. So that said, daily income targets. So if I think about some of the key lessons that Errol has shared with me, and last Friday evening, myself and Tony Dada, Tony Dada is a friend of mine. I'm going to be doing some work with him. Have done some work with him, but we're going to be doing some bigger projects. And he invited me to he does like an interview type podcast on a Friday evening, streams via his Facebook group. So he invited me on that, and we were talking about our friend Errol. So Errol had been a mentor to Tony as well for a number of years. And so obviously Errol passed last October. So we were just talking about the biggest lessons that we'd got from Errol and the impact that it had on our lives. So I was sharing a number of things there. And one of the things that didn't come up actually on that interview, because things just, I just go with the flow, was this idea of daily method of operation. So Errol had what he called his template, which is what I call billionaire productivity. And within that, he had a simple process of kind of defining what the goal was for the business, because he was a big fan. And one of the things he really wanted to get across to me and that he wanted me to learn from him was how to run multiple businesses at the same time. The thing of that is that if you are running multiple businesses, of course, hey, Rajesh, thanks for the comments, by the way, brother. Yes, he is. If you're running multiple businesses, by necessity, it forces you out of overthinking to a certain extent. Like there is still there's still a bit of a J curve to it, but to a greater extent, one thing it does, it's a bit like, I guess, if you go to a gym and the trainer starts saying you've got to come and lift, 3 times the weight you've ever lifted before. And it's like, well, that's going to be impossible. But actually, you kind of give it a whirl and suddenly you discover that even though you can't move it much, you can still move it. Even if you can move it a millimeter, it's a start. And it certainly starts stimulating your muscles to grow stronger. So Errol's big thing with me was multiple businesses, because if you have multiple businesses, your brain expands. And if it expands, then obviously running one business is so much easier. And also in attempting, actually, I shouldn't use that word, should I? But the other side of it, in running multiple businesses, is that it forces you to leverage people and leverage people's strategies. So Errol's big thing was 2, I guess, driving foundational beliefs. One was you're always building assets. And an asset is something which gives you back your freedom and generates income. So everything's a profit center, but the profit center has to be able to ultimately run without you. Of course, when you start your first business, it's just you. There is just you. You got to dig the reservoir. But he was a big fan of that. So you got to kind of get to this place where you're thinking in terms of assets. And so his biggest competitive advantage, or one of the core tenets of his success, was that he always looked at a business. He would have the ideas. He was very creative. He would have the ideas, but then as quickly as possible, he wanted to build a team to run that business. So it was very much put a team in place, next business, put a team in place, next business. And then, of course, one of his daily habits, and this ties back to where we're going with this, one of his daily habits was reports by midday. So he always had all of his reports by midday for all of his businesses. And so at a glance, he could see, are we doing well? How are we doing compared to yesterday? Because, of course, you want to be able to see both the actual absolute numbers in terms of sales revenue and profits, but also you want to be able to see the trend. So are you trending in the right direction? Have you gone flat? Are you trending in the wrong direction? Because, of course, if you're not following the trend, then at some point you might realize you've got a problem. But it's a bit like the earlier you can diagnose a problem, the easier it is to treat, obviously. So that was one of Errol's big things was this idea. And he actually got me into e-commerce. So he was keen for me to just do something else on top of what I was doing at the time. So obviously, property's always been a big thing for me. Online, I've always liked coaching and such, like, because of my NLP background and the desire to help people. So I've always had those kind of going pretty much consistently in some form or another. I've always been doing those. But he was very much, well, look, you should be doing something which is different for you. And he says leverages the internet, because he was really learning about the internet, because, obviously the stage of life he was at, he'd grown up without using the internet. So he was kind of very keen to kind of get inside and apply the same fundamentals that he understood about business to online business, because there's no difference. Fundamentals are the fundamentals. But he was keen for me to do something. And so he actually got me in touch with a client of his, and she was a creative as well. She was designing jewelry. So, what do you call it? Costume jewelry type stuff. It's not precious metals or anything. So she was making her own designs, getting these made up in China. And then at the time, she was listed on Amazon. I mean, she may have changed that since. I haven't spoken to her for a while, but at the time, she was listing them on Amazon in the States, and she was doing extremely well. And so Errol said, look, you should talk to her. I want to put you two together. And I spoke with her, and we came to an arrangement, and she sent over batches of her jewelry, and I listed them on Amazon in the UK. And that's what got me started in e-commerce. And it was fascinating. It was a really interesting exercise. It didn't last forever, as in I don't do it anymore, simply because as a product I mean, the designs were fantastic, but it wasn't something that excited me. And it kind of reminded me that I'm not quite the same as Errol, in the sense of, for me, there has to be some real interest. There has to be a bigger purpose than just making money. And that's part of playing to my strengths and recognizing that within yourself, if that's you as well. So it didn't pan out, but in the beginning it was doing very well. But then as I began to get more into it, because of the fact it was her product and there was a split with her, by the time I'd paid the advertising costs and the cost of the jewelry that was actually selling at, there wasn't a lot in it. It wasn't really worth pursuing from a purely profitable point of view. And from a mission purpose point of view, it didn't play out at all. So I have always, though, once I'd done one, it was like, actually, this is really interesting. What more could I do with e-commerce? And of course, that space has grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. And so over the last, particularly since the pandemic began and we all went into lockdown, it's grown even more. There's more people obviously running more e-commerce type businesses. Shopify, which was already big anyway, is even bigger. It's huge. It's vast. And I prefer kind of Shopify to Amazon these days, just as a place to list. I mean, don't get me wrong, Amazon's massive. I mean, it's a huge marketplace. There's multiple strategies you can use with Amazon if you want to. The point being, though, Errol had this template, he had the goals, and then you break down the goal, obviously, into your plan of action, and then you schedule all those things and you get started. But within that, once you had that, so once you had your projects outline and your project plan, Errol's big thing was, what's your daily method of operation? So in other words, what do you do on a daily basis to drive the revenue in your business? And one of the big distinctions Errol made was there was a difference between what he called productivity and activity. And productivity for him didn't mean, how effectively you're getting so much done. Productivity was very simple. Errol kept things so simple. Productivity was very much drives revenue. Like today, this moment, it drives revenue. So you could look at if you like, for example, most people might make a to-do list. So they'll make a to-do list for the day, but they're not giving any consideration to, are these tasks actually driving revenue? Because if they're not driving revenue, you're not in business. And so they'll just kind of go, well, I'll start with what I've put at the top of the list and I'll work my way down until I've done it all. Now, of course, could you complete everything on your list and still have a day where you haven't actually done anything? You haven't actually driven anything forward? Of course you could. So his whole thing was, what's on that list that's actually driving revenue? He called it ringing the dinner bell. It's like, what's ringing the dinner bell? And so you kind of look through this list and go, what is ringing the dinner bell? And then out of that, you start to recognize there are certain key things that you need to do every single day that keep driving your revenue forward. Obviously, when you're starting out, the majority of that is going to be in the marketing and sales arena, because that's what most businesses are when you start out. So it then ties in with, okay, well, if you're going to do that, you've got to have a good understanding of what you're actually driving towards. So I would say, and I don't know this, I'm thinking back to, if I kind of do a quick survey in my head of all the people I've spoken to over the last 10 years, then I would say probably split fairly evenly. Like if I ask a typical entrepreneurial type audience who sets goals, I'll probably find it split 50-50. There are people that do set goals, some people who don't set goals. But then when I ask, okay, who's got goals, and who's then actually taken that goal, whatever time frame that is, and translated it into what needs to happen today. Now that gets really small, very rapidly, as in most people haven't done that. So you got to be able to take a goal. Like I'll give you an example. So yesterday I was planning what I want to do over the next couple of years. One of the things was with the e-commerce side. I'm not going to tell you exactly what the business is. That's my business for the time being. You'll soon find out more about it. But I set a goal for that business of $40 million revenue a year. So if you say, okay, that's $40 million in revenue per year, what is that daily? That's the important part. Because setting a goal and saying, over the next 12 months, then, I want this business to do 40 million in revenue through my e-commerce site. That all sounds great and it all sounds wonderful. But actually, what does that mean on a daily level? Now, if you do the math, it works out around about $110,000 a day, 7 days a week. Now, that gets interesting because now that's a real focus. One of the key values of having a daily income target is it's real focus. It's like today. So it's like you're not thinking, oh, this is something I want to achieve over the next 12 months. And the challenge with having goals which are only defined as, 6 months away or 12 months away is that it's too long a time frame. So your brain kind of goes, certainly if you're like me, if you're more of an ENFP than an ENFJ like I am, then your brain kind of goes, well, that's 12 months away. We're not so bothered today. It's like, we're not so urgent. It's like we'll do some things which I know are relevant and important, but it's like they're not necessarily going to drive revenue today. That's okay, because we still got 12 months to go. But of course, if you're in that mindset and you do that tomorrow, the next day, first of all, anything you do repeatedly becomes a habit. So then all of a sudden you find yourself, you're in a habit where you're doing things, you feel good that you're doing something, but actually it's not driving revenue. And now it's not so good. And all of a sudden things catch up. This is why, the 90-day year is a good habit to get into, and why I'm a strong advocate of it within my Crush It program. Quick plug there for you. Is that 90 days very often it's for people is both is short enough to be exciting. It's long enough to make a dent in any kind of real goal. And then, but from a 90-day, so for most people, and it's not overwhelming, because when I first suggest to people the idea of a daily income target, sometimes that can be overwhelming. They're like, what, you mean I've got to make $110,000 today? And it's like, no, you got to have that in mind. It's like, so then within that, it's like, okay, at what point do you want to be hitting that? So for example, when I first started selling courses online, my original daily income target was just $1,000 a day. It's like, I want to get to $1,000 a day. That seemed like a really good milestone. So you could look at that and say, well, that's $30,000 a month in course revenue. Yes, it is. And that's, whatever it might be. Like, so over 90 days, from my perspective, like, okay, I took a 90-day chunk and said, all right, within that 90 days, by the end of the 90 days, I want to be hitting $1,000 a day in revenue. Does that make sense? So it gave me a focus related to a daily income target, and I gave myself that as a goal and as a project to get to. Yes, 90 days, 12 weeks. Yeah, it seems achievable as long as the person implements take action. Well, that's always the case. And is open to feedback. Like, the other side of this is, of course, don't expect what you do to be perfect. Like, if I write a project plan, I don't expect it to be perfect day one. I expect it to get me moving in the right direction. And I also know that as I take action, I'm going to get more feedback. It's that whole thing. There's a lot of emphasis. I think I've mentioned this before. There's a lot of emphasis, certainly within the coaching community, where we're focused on who your ideal client is. Like, who's your ideal client? And then you go after them. It's like, but actually day one, your ideal client might actually be your best guess. So sometimes some of these things can actually get in the way. You end up being in a situation where you're going, well, I don't know who my ideal client is exactly, so I'm going to overthink who that is, and I'm going to spend weeks trying to work that out and end up getting myself stressed out and overwhelmed, and you've just wasted weeks that haven't driven any revenue whatsoever. Whereas if you go, okay, look, I'd like my ideal client to be this kind of person, and I suspect they've got these kind of problems. Now you can back up all of those guesses with a little bit of research, but more importantly, it's like, just get moving. Go talk to these people so you can get feedback. So yes, you got to take action, no question. And you got to accept and oftentimes expect that the action you take isn't going to give you the result straight away. What it is going to give you is information to refine your decision. So it's like you keep tweaking things, which, it always, everything ultimately comes back to, the way I first learned it in NLP, they have what they call the ultimate success formula. So it's like, take action, like define your goal, take action, get feedback. And within that feedback, it was change your approach. In other words, if what you're doing isn't working, do something different. Do anything different, because what you're doing isn't working. So doing more of it isn't going to help. So it was that very much that idea of apply the ultimate success formula to everything that you do. So I go out of my way to create a project plan, which I believe is as thorough and as detailed as possible in terms of giving me the highest probability of success out the gate. But I don't spend so long on it trying to think it's got to be absolutely perfect, because I know it never is going to be. Nothing's perfect without action. I think that's the key to remember. Nothing is perfect without taking action, because it's the action that gives you more clarity around what you need to do next. I've got campaigns running at the moment, advertising campaigns. They're doing a certain amount of work. They're doing a certain amount of, they're going in the right direction, but I know I'm going to be tweaking them. This week I'm testing 3 new video sales letters. Do I expect all 3 to work perfectly out the gate? No. Of course not, but it'll give me some indication and some idea of what is working and what isn't working, what angles are working, what angles aren't working, what I should pay more attention to, what I should drop completely. So it's that whole thing of take action and expect to use action to give you feedback, to create more clarity, to refine your decisions, to keep moving forward so that you hit your goals. But it comes back to, you got to have that daily income target. So daily income target, one, take your goal. So if it's a 90-day goal, then break it down and say, okay, if it's going to be, if I'm basing it on a 5-day week, then obviously work it out on a 5-day week. If you're basing it on a 7-day week, work it out on a 7-day week. Either way, just get a figure for the day. So if it is $1,000 a day is your first income target, then great. Now your daily income target is $1,000 a day. I would say there is another way to think about this, and this ties in with the whole lifestyle aspect. If you say, okay, what, and I don't know if you've done this, I know I've mentioned it before. If you were to say, okay, what's my ideal lifestyle cost? And I remember years ago, actually I did, when I first met, there's a guy out there called Tony Quinn, and he runs a company called Aduco. And he has a number of businesses. He runs a supplement business. He runs yoga businesses. He's got gyms. He also has his own multi-gym equipment that he had specially designed, and he has gyms built around, that just use his equipment. So successful entrepreneur. And I remember talking to him one time, and he was telling a story where he had met Bill Hubner. And Bill Hubner's actually, I mean, I'm assuming he's still alive. I haven't seen him in 20 years. But Bill Hubner, multi-billionaire, and one of his businesses was gym equipment. But he and Tony Quinn were having dinner one time, and Tony, this is early on when Tony had first met him, and he says to Bill, because they were in one of Bill's properties, which I think was somewhere in California, somewhere. I know it's a big place. I can't remember exactly where it was. And Tony was impressed with the property. It was a beautiful property, and to give you an idea, the bathroom, one of the shower rooms, like the ensuite shower room to the master bedroom, had been customized because of where the property was located. This gives you an idea of what you can do when you've got some money. Because of where the property was located, it was actually in, I want to say Palm something or other. But the terrain is very rocky. I mean, I've been there. It's a beautiful kind of reddish rock terrain. So it's stunning to look at. Almost desert-like to a certain extent, but it's stunning to look at. And so this property of Bill's was built on this terrain up in the mountain. And so the master ensuite, what he'd done was he'd got them to build the wall so that when he was in the shower, he could literally press a button and the wall would move back so he could see the view of these mountains. So obviously it was completely private. No one's going to see him in the shower. But to give you an idea, it was like literally like that. It's like he could slide this wall back and have, just as he's doing a shower, as he's having his shower, he could see this amazing landscape and obviously take in the beauty of what has been made for him in terms of, the terrain and the rock and everything. I mean, absolutely stunning. So Tony was sat down having dinner with Bill, and he says to Bill, what does your lifestyle cost? Like on a monthly basis, what does it cost to run your lifestyle? So Bill had kind of got a bit of paper and a pen and just written down, because he had multiple homes. He ran his own jets. He also had I went on this because I met him in Monte Carlo. He had a stunning, I don't know what the right word is. It's not a yacht because it has an engine, but it's a stunning boat. And I know those aficionados of sailing and boating would absolutely, motorized yacht, super yacht, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it was amazing, but he had this thing, and it used to get put on a bigger boat and then get brought from the States to the Mediterranean so Bill could spend his summers in the Mediterranean. So he's writing this all down. He came up with this figure, and he turns to Tony and says, okay, it roughly cost me this a month. So whatever the figure was. And so Tony was like, right, I'll have that within a year. And he did. Within a year, he was making that much enough per month to live Bill's lifestyle. So in other words, you could pay for the cost of all the things that Bill needs to pay for on a monthly basis. So in your own lifestyle, it's often worth actually sitting down and go, okay, what does my ideal lifestyle cost? So before you start thinking about your ideal client, what's your ideal lifestyle? And you might say, okay, look, within that, the home I want to live in, the mortgage is going to cost X, and you can do a little bit of research to get some validation and make sure you've got some fairly accurate numbers. So you're not sort of just making things up. So you get some idea of what the mortgage is going to cost for you to buy the property you want to buy, to live in the property, what's it going to cost you in terms of, council tax if you're in the UK, property taxes if you're over in the States, so all these different things, electricity, if you're, all these little things. Then the cars, what cars do you want to drive? Do you want a car for you, a car for your significant other, car for your children if they're old enough to drive? So what do you need? What are they going to cost to lease? What are they going to cost to insure? What are they going to cost to run? So you put all that in, and so you'll get an idea of the costs of your lifestyle. And then all you need to then do is kind of go say, look, I've got this figure. What is that on a monthly basis? And then divide by 30. Now you've got a daily income target. Now, I would say one of the things to remember to add in is tax. So whatever figure you come to, so if it's going to cost you, let's say, let's say it costs you £20,000 or $20,000 a month to run your ideal life, then probably double that just for tax sake. If you double it, you'll be way beyond what you're ever going to spend on tax, but you get the idea, or at least another 30% on top. So you get an idea. So then you go, okay, so if it might cost me 20,000, actually I need 40,000. Let's keep the number simple. Let's say it's 30,000. Divide it by 30, so we're back to $1,000 a day. So you need $1,000 a day in profit in that case. So that's then your daily income target. So now you've got a figure. You've got a bigger reason to hit that figure than just creating a number. Like a number doesn't motivate me. Putting a number down is just nothing for me. I have to know that it's got something tangible behind it. So it can be lifestyle, and that's a good thing. It can also be a reflection of the fact that I'm living my purpose. That's also a big driver for me. So you want to put those things down. So now you've got your target. Now you've got this daily focus. So each morning when you get up and each night when you're planning the next day, this is what I've got to be doing. And so within that, you can then start measuring, because this is the important part. Let's say today you decide your income. Let's say you've done this exercise before and you arrive at what I've just said. You end up at around about $1,000 a day that you need in profit. So maybe for the time being, just stick with $1,000 a day. We'll keep it simple. So you got $1,000 a day and say, okay, so today, by the end of today, like literally tonight, when you switch off for Friday and you go, okay, whatever time, 6:30, whatever it might be, and you go, hey, that's me done for the day. How much have you made today? Now, if the answer is nothing, that's cool. Because more importantly, you've measured it. So grab your little daily project notebook like I have mine and just write for the day, revenue for the day, 0. It's like, cool. So if you're working on a 5-day week and you say, okay, Monday, I need to do $1,000. Now you've got yourself a little bit of time to think about, okay, what do you need to do differently? So this is the whole point. It's like everything should give you feedback. So the whole point of a daily target is you've got the focus for it, but then also it's giving you feedback because it's very measurable. If you're not hitting your daily income target, very measurable. You are not, either you're doing things you shouldn't be doing or you're not doing things you need to be doing. And either's fine as long as you understand it's feedback. So it's like, okay, what do I need to do differently? So from a pure, like I say, when you first start your business, it's all marketing and selling. So you might say, well, let's break you down. Did you get enough leads? If you got enough leads, did you get enough conversions? If you got enough leads and enough conversions, is the price high enough? Because if you're trying to sell, $10 ebooks, then you got to sell quite a few of those to hit $1,000 a day in revenue, let alone in profit. Whereas if you're selling something which is a higher ticket item, one, the amount of selling required from an effort point of view, there's very, very little difference. But from a revenue point of view and from a leverage point of view, massively different. I'll stick it with you, keep it on you for the time being. If you have a program, so if you're a coach, then obviously you probably already know by now. And if you don't, you want to turn whatever you do as a coach into some sort of program, because then it's got tangibles to it, as it's got start time and end time. So typically it might be a 6-week program. 6 weeks is a good chunk of time for people. Typically what I found is if I say to people it's a 3-month program, some people buy it straight away, that's fine. But other people actually find it easier to buy a 6-week and then do a follow-up 6-week. And, depends on the person. But more importantly, it's tangible. So if I say it's a 6-week program, it's like you start here and you finish here. 6 weeks, we're done. And there's a tangible result that you're going to achieve in that 6 weeks. So turn your coaching, which is intangible, into something tangible by turning it into a program. If you charge $2,000 for that program, how many of those you got to sell a day? 1. In fact, if you're looking just to hit 1,000 a day, you've got to sell 1 every 2 days. So you don't even have to do it daily. And doing it daily, obviously you're ahead of the game. You've got more funds to play with. But it gives you that focus. So you kind of say, okay, am I getting enough leads? Yes or no. If you're not, okay, what do you need to do to generate more leads? If you want to accelerate the process of getting leads, then obviously you're going to be paying for them in some way. And that's fine. Take some money, start spending on advertising and get some leads in the door. The leads are only cost you. Your markets only cost you money if you're not converting. Because, of course, once you generate the lead, now it's like, can you convert them? How are you converting? What's your conversion mechanism? What's your vehicle for converting people? Or I saw a little clip yesterday of somebody on LinkedIn. I think he must be a LinkedIn trainer of some sort, but he'd done like a 2-minute video using LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which I've used in the past. And Sales Navigator, it's a paid for service with LinkedIn. I forget what it costs now. I don't know, but it's not hugely expensive, but it gives you a lot of search functionality. So it allows you to search for types of people, and it also allows you to send them messages, whether you're connected to them or not. That's the whole point. So if you had that, for example, and like Rajesh, you know that you're after estate agents, well, go on LinkedIn. You could search for estate agents, even without Sales Navigator. You can search for estate agents and then just look at sending them messages. I mean, even as a cold outreach program, that's going to drive more revenue than trying to spend the next month trying to be too clever about it. Like, I'm all for, okay, it's £80 a month. So £80 a month, that's pretty good. £80 a month. I mean, what? If you're selling a £2,000 product, £80 a month, how many of those you need to get to repay your money? One. But more importantly, if you can get into the habit where you're reaching out, doing sending X number of messages to generate X number of leads, taking X number of leads and getting them on a call. And then, of course, as you start doing that, let's say, like the whole focus of coaching was to get people onto some sort of call. It's like a discovery call, whatever you want to call it. So then you go, okay, so what am I doing to do that? So now you're into, I know who I want to reach. Let's send a message out to them. You can support that by, of course, if we're using LinkedIn as a platform, all the content you put out on your posts should reinforce your credibility, should highlight what you offer. So through the week, you should be doing all of that and should be sharing content that gets people's attention, which is all about the message. Ultimately, finding the right leads, finding the right people really comes down to the message. It's like, who do you want? What's the message that's going to resonate with them and get their attention? That's really all it's down to. So once you've done that, then it's like, okay, now how can I get them on a, hey, Gus. Nice to see you. Once you got their attention, it's like, okay, I want them on a discovery call. So then you got to give them reasons to come on a discovery call. And then so it's like, how many of those you need to send out a day in order to get one discovery call? How many of those you got to do to get 3 discovery calls a day? And once you got 3 discovery calls a day, you should at least be closing 1 in 3. Certainly, as someone who's offering sales skills, then 1 in 3. Now you made $2,000 a day. So you're looking at, can I get 3 discovery calls a day? Can I get one conversion a day? That's all doable. But that all comes out of saying, I've got a daily income target. Now I've got to focus. So they become daily habits. Entrepreneurial success is about habits. That's it. It's like, what are the entrepreneurial habits that you need to drive the revenue you want? And that's what Errol was driving at. His whole thing of your daily method of operation, he was really saying, that was his way of saying, what are your daily habits? What are the habits you need to instill to drive that? And I'll give you another little thing as well. I've set a big ambitious goal for my e-commerce business. So I therefore need, and I've done this all the way through. So when I started out, it's like, I want to make $1,000 a day selling courses. I would literally write in my journal, I am a 4-figure per day online entrepreneur. It was that sort of thing. I can't remember the exact words, but it was very much so. And I used to have 3 phrases, and the second phrase never changes because it just says, I embody the habits of. So for example, when I wanted to I want to hit 6 figures a month online, it was like, I embody the habits of a 6-figure per month online entrepreneur. I mean, that was it. That was my phrase. And of course, that drives everything because I'm then drilling into myself and reminding myself of the identity of who I need to be to consistently follow the habits that will consistently drive the results that I want. Does that make sense? Maybe I should say that again. The most powerful thing that came out of Errol's like distinct daily method of operation. What he's basically saying is, what are your daily habits Focused on productivity to Errol meant it rings the dinner bell, it drives revenue. So what are your revenue driving daily habits? Once you identify what they are, and they're going to be lead generation and conversion, I can tell you right now, they're all going to be based around those two categories, and the two are tied together. And in the beginning, it's like cold calling, cold messaging is better than doing nothing. I don't care how many people get upset by it. It doesn't matter. You just need to get in front of enough people. And that's all about messaging. Nobody complains when you put the right message in front of them. Like I did cold out when LinkedIn, 2014, 2016, I did a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. And I know the rules have changed and such like, but I did a lot of stuff on LinkedIn where I was literally just each day sending out messages. I was sending out a message that just said, this is what I do. I gave them like a headline. I knew who I was focused on. And it's like, go watch this. And I had a little video that people watched. And at the end of it, it just said, book a discovery call. So literally at the end of like a little video, book a discovery call. And I had people booking calls. And, some of the relationships I started then, I still have today and have supported me all that time. And that was literally how I got in front of people. And once I got in front of people, I had a process. This is the other side of it. It's like, I don't just wing it. If I'm on a discovery call with somebody, I ain't winging it. My discovery calls are as structured as my webinars. I know exactly what I want to cover, not word by word. I don't have a script, but I have a structure, and there's no secret. I map the gap with people. When I get someone on a discovery call, it's very much like, where are you now? Where would you like to get to? What do we need to do to close the gap? And I just have a process that does that. And we map it out literally. So by the end of it, all I'm doing is I'm giving them a plan. I'm saying, here's what you need to do to close the gap to where you want to get to. And then when I've done that, the final thing is, would you like my help? That's it. That's my close. Would you like my help? And they say, yes. I say, great. It's going to cost this much. Boom. Get your card. And that's how I close pretty much everything. And my close rate was very high. What were those affirmations? Yeah, I mean, they're driven by like for example, I tell you what, because I've set this new ambitious goal for my e-commerce business. So therefore, I need to be driving $110,000 per day of revenue through my e-commerce business. Now, for me, the most powerful, rather than giving you copy my affirmation, let me tell you how I arrive at it, then you can do it for yourself. The most powerful driver of our behavior consistently is our identity. So if you look at people, for example, who follow a weight loss program and stick to it, they stick to it because they change their identity. If you look at people that go from being a smoker to never smoking again, it's because they shift their identity. That's why I talk about future self so much. It's like that is the most powerful force in our psychology. So you've got to be leveraging it. So therefore, my affirmations tie into what's the identity I'm embodying. So for me, I just use the label of entrepreneur or online entrepreneur. So that's my label for the identity. So in the beginning, it was, I want to be $1,000 a day online entrepreneur. That's the identity. Then it's like, I want to be a 6-figure per month online entrepreneur. That's the identity. Now, the new one is, I am a 6-figure per day online entrepreneur. That's my affirmation. I am a 6 figures per day online entrepreneur. I embody the habits. So then my second affirmation is, I embody the habits, the daily habits of a 6 figures per day online entrepreneur. And then my third statement to reinforce it is, I own it. I live it. I am it. And I start my day in my journal by writing that out and underline. I like colored pens. So I'll write it and then I underline all 3 sentences with... if you want specifics, I use these Papermate Flare pens, and they're nice colors and they're really nice pens. And I just underline it and I'm just reinforcing it to myself. So I'm reinforcing an identity that drives daily habits. Therefore, it drives daily actions that drives the revenue into my business. Does that help? If you want to do it without constantly pitching people in the sense of, reaching out cold all the time, then it's all down to content. It's content in the sense of you're building a fan base. So all the things I've talked about the last few weeks, the invisible influence, it's all a fan base. It's all about building that fan base. So then that's understanding how you're positioning yourself, what your superpower is, if you like, what your strength is, and how you're demonstrating that to people. And that's what I consistently do. Now, to accelerate it, as I said before, once you've got some content around that, once you've got some stories around that, then you can obviously promote those stories like I do on Facebook and YouTube. And actually, I'm about to launch on Pinterest as well. I thought I'd test Pinterest, see how I get on with that. But the simple answer is you got to build a fan base. Like, so you've got an audience to talk to, because without an audience, you got nothing. So, I've said this before in the past, I relied on promoters. Promoters put the audience in the room. I just had to turn up with a great presentation. But at the same time, I still had to turn as many people as possible in the audience into fans. So my focus was always rapport, trust, credibility, fans, because that's what those three things give me, fans. So that therefore, once someone's a fan and they buy from me, they weren't then going to change their mind when the next speaker came on stage and did whatever their pitch was. That makes sense. So I haven't always called it fan base, but I've always been building a fan base focused. So now, of course, since I'm not relying on promoters, I'm relying on building it all myself. Then it's like, okay, no, I want to build an audience. So that's what I've been doing. And to put it in perspective, a couple of hundred people, the right people in your audience will certainly put you in six figures, no doubt. But it's not difficult. It's just consistency. So now we're back to, what are your daily habits? So now we're back to, what's your daily method of operation? Now we're back to, what is your daily income target? Because that's what's going to drive your habits. That's what's going to drive the productivity. That's what's going to drive the income. So audience before content. Yes. Audience before content. No, content grows the audience. So everyone else plug their ears for a second. Rajesh, I know, but actually, if anyone else who's listening who's also in the strategic den, then you'll have access to this, because I'm about to release it today. Everything I've talked about invisible influence and building a fan base, I've now turned it into a product, which I'm actually actively promoting right this second. The adverts are running as I'm talking to you. But also, if you're in the strategic den, you're going to get access to that. So you've got this weekend to go through it and start building out, follow the exercises, do the work, and start building, then start putting content out on Monday that builds your audience. That's the whole point. Content grows the audience. Then once you've got the content, then you're making offers to the audience. So, and it's the offers which could be, come on a discovery call. What I would say though in the beginning is, you want to drive revenue as quickly as possible. So if you haven't got an audience, and this was the challenge I had, and therefore, when I did it on LinkedIn a few years back, was, well, if I haven't got an audience, then I'll find the people that I know I can help, which is easy to search for, and then I'll just send them a message. And it was like, well, if I don't want to seem pitchy, I'd send a message and say, go watch this video. And, look, don't get me wrong, you're going to get people who will. Like, I had people coming back saying, don't send me a spam, you're blocked. And then they'd block me, and obviously being righteous and pious about it. It's like, well, you're blocked because you sent me a message which is effectively really a pitch, however nice the words might be. And it's like, yeah, it is. And if you don't want the help, you don't want the help. I'm cool with it. Next, 7 billion people on the planet. I don't need them all, but I know I can help. And so, but in the beginning, that's what I was doing, because you've got to get the money in. The bills keep piling up. You got to pay them. So if nothing else, that's the reason for doing something on a daily basis that drives revenue. So, I was just sending out messages and connecting with people, sending out messages, but plus putting content. So on LinkedIn, they could go and read my profile. Your profile matters a lot on LinkedIn. So make sure that is a call to action. If that's driving people, like if you look at my profile on LinkedIn at the moment, bottom of it just says book a call. Like, it's still there. And I've only updated that this week because I'm doing a coaching program around the invisible influence, which is a high ticket program, and I want to run it. I'm excited about it. I want to do this. So therefore I've put that on there. So any opportunity for somebody sees my content on LinkedIn, and I know I tend to put little bits of content. I think LinkedIn are expanding how much you can write on a post, because I've never liked the articles thing. I tried it. It's like, what's the point of this? Nobody sees this. So I've put them in posts, but then you'll get people going from post, profile, click, book a call. That happens. So, and then of course you'll get people who don't book a call, but just drop you a message saying, can we have a call? And it's like, well, yeah, the link's there. But whatever way people want to do it. But in the beginning, yes, if you're doing it almost cold effectively, then post content, I would say in the beginning, do daily content. And if you can, do a couple of paragraphs of something which is valuable. So we're back to map the gap. What are the steps to them to close the gap on their goals? What's the goal you're delivering? If someone blocks me on, never take it personally. I mean, how many people are on LinkedIn now? Nearly 1 billion people. It's like 800 million or something. And out of that, there's probably going to be a couple of million estate agents. And so out of that, how many do you need? No, I personally use Book Like a Boss because they did it. I mean, back in 2016, they did one of these AppSumo deals, and I just bought it. It was like, oh, that'd be useful. I'll buy that, and I've had it ever since. So that's what I use. Where was I? Yeah, back to identity. Identity is important. So embed the identity. Well, how would you describe it? For me personally, I think of myself as an online entrepreneur. So in terms of driving revenue, that's my identity. As a coach, my identity is to help people. So when I talk to people one-on-one, now I'm a coach. Like I don't. So I'm not trying to say you should have multiple personalities. I don't, so it's not like split personality, schizophrenia, or anything like that I need therapeutic help with, or maybe I do. But I certainly have this idea that when I'm in front of an audience, or I'm talking to somebody personally one-on-one, or I'm delivering a webinar, then I'm a coach, because it's all coaching to me. But from a business perspective, so if you think in terms of Michael Gerber's concept of in your business or on your business, when I'm in my business, I'm a coach. I'm there to serve, to support, to help, to kick your frigging butt all the way to the goal. As I used to say to audiences, that frigging arse Paul Elliott wants me to be financially free. How dare he? It's like, absolutely. I don't mind if you like me or not, but I'm going to kick your butt to the goal. So that's me as a coach. When I'm on my business, then I'm not a coach. I'm an entrepreneur, because it's an entrepreneur that drives revenue. Does that make sense? And so specifically these days, I think of myself as an online entrepreneur. I guess if you were doing, I know some of you know me for property and real estate investing. If you want to do that, you could think of yourself as a real estate investor, or just think of yourself as an investor, however you want to drive it. So that's how I do it. But it is that very much, it's like write affirmations that embed the identity of who you need to be and want to be, to drive the habits, to develop the daily habits, to drive the actions, to drive the revenue. But all of that start with the end in mind, which is, what's that daily income target? And if you're not sure, you don't want to just pick something out of thin air, then go back to, okay, literally just grab a piece of paper or get a spreadsheet if you like spreadsheets, and do the, okay, lifestyle. What does your lifestyle cost? Where do you want to live? Like if you wanted to live in Palm Beach in Florida, then, go online, look up real estate Palm Beach, Florida, see what kind of mansions they got and which one you want. And if it's going to cost you $16 million to buy, go do a quick check of what that's likely to cost you as a mortgage. You're probably going to be putting down 20-25% as a deposit. So, but put that to one side for now. I wouldn't worry too much about the deposits, but focus on it in terms of mortgage cost. So you might say, well, the mortgage is going to be, I don't know, let's say the mortgage is going to be $50,000 a month. Great. $50,000 a month. So that's the home. Then what cars do you want to drive? What's that going to cost you? And so do it that way. Think of it as ideal lifestyle. And then, but ultimately the goal is whatever that figure is per month, divided by 30. Now you've got a daily income target. That's what you got to drive every day. So you'd be looking at it and saying, okay, I need to be making $10,000 a day, or I need to be making $4,000. Like $4,000 a day, 5 days a week, that's $20,000 a week. That's $1 million a year, which for most people is a frigging good lifestyle. Okay. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. So daily income targets. Hopefully by now you're excited about the idea of it. It's not something to wield as a sword. It's something to dangle as a carrot. It drives you. The whole idea of any kind of target is that it gives you focus and it drives you excitedly. It's not like, oh, I've got to do that. It's like, wow, I get to do that. I get to work out what it's going to take for me to get to your $1,000 a day, or your 10,000, or in my case, on my e-commerce business now, and you can hold me to this. If you want to check in with me, by all means do so on a quarterly basis, to get to $110,000 a day in revenue for my e-commerce business. It's like, that's a big aspirational goal. That's a big, I shouldn't be swearing on lives, but that's a big F bleep, bleep, bleep goal. And I'm excited about it. Really excited about it. And then it's like, okay, so what's the strategy got to be? What kind of angles have we got to use? Who are we going to be targeting? How are we going to make that work? And I already got answers for that. So in other words, I've got my best guesses for that initial plan and the kind of angles that I want to use. I also know the team I need to build to support that, because I ain't going to do that on my own. So I know the team I need to build. I also know, therefore, if I've got a team, I need somebody to manage the team effectively, because I'm not very good on a day-to-day basis as a team manager. I'm terrible at that, but I know someone who's fantastic at it. So, of course, they're going to be the person doing that. And then we've got a team that's driving it. And then, again, I follow the script. What's my daily method of operation? What's my daily habits? And then, of course, reports by 12. It's like, yep, I need the reports every day so I can see the figures and make sure we're on track, make sure we're trending in the right direction. And then I'm back to being creative. Like, I'll probably spend most of my time coming up with concepts and ideas for videos and angles for adverts to drive the revenue, to drive the leads, to drive the sales, to drive the revenue. But it all comes down to daily income target. So I'll leave you with this. What is your daily income target? 10,000 in a job, then 1 by 15 equals 150K a year. Okay. So 150K a year is your profit target. Okay. So what's that? 15,000. Yeah, less than 15,000 a month, isn't it? About 12,000 a month. So 12,000 a month. Let's say 20 days. Is that 500-600 a day or something? It's not huge. It's about 3,000 a week, isn't it? Yes, it's about 600 a day. So your daily income target is £600 a day. Straight. If you're selling a coaching program, £600 a day, fairly easy. I don't mean that disrespectful. I don't want to make it sound like I'm being, what's the word? I'm dismissive of it. It's like, it's a good target. £600 a day is a good target. What I'm saying is £600 a day as a coach with a package, like whether it's a 6-week program, get my hands in the camera. It's a 6-week program. £600 is fairly small amount of money for a high ticket program. Yeah. Okay. So £600 a day. I mean, if it's £600 a day, like, make sure, does that excite you? So, I'd probably encourage you to say it's £1,000 a day, just because it's a nice round figure and it's 4 figures a day. And then it's like, okay, from the business perspective, like, obviously in your business, you're a coach. Outside of your business, you can adopt what I do, which is I call myself an online entrepreneur. Then you can adopt that identity. So then think of it as in, I am a £1,000 per day online entrepreneur. I embody the habits of a £1,000 a day online entrepreneur. I live it. I own it. I am it, so. All right. So if that's been of use to you, please give me a thumbs up, share this, tell your friends, tell everybody, spread the word a little bit. I'd appreciate the love, and get out there, define your income target, and just get on with it. Literally. And if you got any questions, you got any challenges, it's always, I can tell you now, it'll always come down to the number of leads and number of conversions. Are you generating enough leads? Are you generating enough conversions? If you're selling coaching these days, I would say anything that you put out there, give people a way to book a call with you. And beyond that, anything you put out, like as you start getting a little bit more sophisticated and you start saying, well, I want to run a webinar or I want to put videos out there, then if people are opted in anywhere, I would suggest start asking for their phone numbers. So if you can get somebody to ask for your phone number, then that works very well, because of course then you've got a way to follow up with them or text them, because text is very powerful at the moment. So not just using email as a follow-up system, but using text as a follow-up system, very powerful, because people see it. People are on their phones constantly, so they see it, and it's good reminders for them. All right, I will wrap it up there. I've obviously got busy things to get done today because, I've got an e-commerce business to grow on top of my coaching business, on top of my property business, on top of a few of the little projects that I'm working on as well. Life is exciting. There's way more opportunity out there than there's ever been in the history of the world. It is fantastic. All right, I will talk to you again next week. In the meantime, by all means, any comments you want to leave me, then please do. I will do my best to reply to all of them. Any questions you want to ask, I'll do my best to answer them. If you haven't joined the Strategic Rebels on Facebook, please do so as well. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I'll be putting out more content over the next few weeks and beyond. And I will say, have a great weekend. Take it easy.